Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cynthia Linox Show featuring vintage charm at 60 plus. Thank you for joining me today. I am your host, Cynthia Linox, here to remind you to celebrate your season with the freedom and intention. And even if you're not yet a vintage charm at 60 plus, if you're like nipping at the heels of vintage charm, whatever season you are in, celebrate yourself, celebrate the freedom that you have, celebrate your accomplishment, your achievements, just celebrate life in general. Because really, every day that you wake up is a privilege. And for that, we are always grateful. Yesterday I had a very interesting day. We had thunderstorms in the area. And with that, in my community, we had like a 6 hour power outage. It went out like at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had just had something to eat and so forth. So a friend called me and she said, "Have you eaten yet?" I said, "Yes, I already did." She says, "Why don't you join me for dinner?" And I thought that was cute. He's like, "Did you not hear me?" But anyway, I said, "No, I said, we have a power outage, and I'd rather be at home when the power comes back on and so forth." And she goes, "By all means, you should, leave the house and so forth." Anyway, I stayed home because, again, I wanted to be at home when the power uh, got restored. So imagine that 66 hours. Well, of course, it came back on at about 10:30. But the point is, it started at 4, and I got a text from the uh, power company saying that it would be on at 5:30. I was in the middle of doing some work on the computer, and was some serious business I was doing and conducting, and so it really put a you know wrench in this whole thing that I was doing. But I thought, okay, it's going to come back at 5:30. I can finish what I was doing. 5:30 comes, no power. 6 o'clock, I get another text, and the text says, "Power will not, we're still working on it. Power will not be restored until about 10 o'clock." Imagine that. So from 6 to 10, that's 4 hours. And, we are in the fall, so it's getting dark. And, by 7 o'clock, it was like dark. It was like, and I was home by myself. I was home alone, and no issues with that. It's just that, I would have to deal with it, and want to chat with it and so forth. And so I had to decide what I was going to do in these 4 hours. I could take a nap. That was out of the question because it was too early. I didn't want to go take a nap. So I allowed myself to, I thought I would just sit and meditate and contemplate and just think about things. I like to do that every once in a while, actually, pretty often. And it's always in a very productive manner, except that yesterday I allowed myself to go into a very sad place. And I guess I needed to do that simply because I needed to really process some thoughts that I was having. A few days ago, one of my acquaintances on social media posted that she had just lost a friend by suicide. When I read the post, it really saddened my heart because, it's something that it's hard to process. When we have situations like that, if the person is close to us, the question that comes to mind is, why was I not there? Or why did they not reach out to me? Or, you just feel a sense of sorrow and guilt, and just an awful feeling. Not only are you missing the presence of your friend, but you just wonder, why did you not have an opportunity to talk to that person, to encourage them and so forth? So I got to think of that, and I just could not really uh, process what would cause someone to take their own life. And then I start thinking of other people that, people in the media that we have seen, like Anthony Bourdain. You remember Anthony Bourdain? He is a chef that traveled all around the world and shared a lot of experiences with us of the different dishes and the different places he visited and so forth. A show that I thoroughly enjoyed. Then I thought of Robin Williams. Remember Robin Williams, Mrs. Doubtfire? He brought us a lot of humor, and was just a great actor. And then I thought of Tory Burch. Tory Burch is she was a well-known fashion designer and so forth. Anyway, I allowed myself in that space for about an hour, just really thinking and thinking of the people that I know, and just really making a commitment to myself to do whatever I can to reach out to people that I'm close to, and just to be mindful, because those signs we don't recognize those signs in people. We laugh and we smile and we appear to be have it together and have a good handle on the thoughts that we entertain, but then we find out the person is no longer with us, and by suicide. And you just wonder, like, how did I not see that coming? But in most cases we don't, and that's just really sad for the people that are left behind, because it leaves us with a sense of sometimes inadequacy and sometimes guilt and so forth. Judge ourselves and so forth. But the more I think about it, and the people that I talk to, sometimes when I coach, people share things with me that sometimes now I'm really paying a lot of attention. And now that we are in this season of vintage charm, in my mind, it's a great season to celebrate whatever season you are in, to celebrate your life, to celebrate the freedom. And once you learn, all the little things that you need to do to free yourself from all the weight and the thoughts and the guilt and all those things, you're able to live freely, a freedom that is really a whole lot different than when you were, in our case, when we were in our teens or in our 20s and so forth, where you're subject to so many rules and laws and learning things that which we do know now, because you really have to value the experiences that you have garnered in your earlier years, and you apply it today, and you have the freedom to make decisions without second guessing yourself. You have the freedom not to overthink things. You have the confidence and the assertiveness to deliver with boldness. And those are the attributes that we should really celebrate during this season. But I find that a lot of people are not really celebrating themselves. People really are veering on the negative side of life. I have people that someone shared the other day that they feel invisible. Imagine that. They said they feel invisible to the world, invisible to their family, just invisible. And I was like, oh my God. She's like, why would you feel invisible? But that was her reality. She felt invisible. Some people say, I feel like my life has no meaning. There's no purpose. There's no, I have no motivation to do anything and so forth. And people are just really veering south instead of, upward, thinking, wow, this is the best season of my life, and I can do pretty much whatever I choose to do, and live life on my own terms and be unapologetic for expressing myself and being my true authentic self and things like that. People are really having problems. And I had an opportunity to ask someone, what do you think is driving that? What are those thoughts provoked by? And this person said to me, well, growing up, there's all these things that, all this information, the programming, the conditioning, the indoctrination. And then she really paused at this point and said, that's it, religious indoctrination. And I was like, religious indoctrination, like, we've all had that. And she went on to share with me how she grew up in a religious circle, religious household, and all these things that she was taught that has stayed with her, and she really thinks in those terms. And she shared to me how she doesn't think she's worthy, and talks about being a sinner and doesn't have any value. Her life has no meaning. Not to trust herself, not to trust her heart. And all those things weighed upon her. And she said it was just hard for her to shake it. it was hard for her to shake those thoughts because they were so embedded in her that she just could not shake it. And I could not really relate to that because I did not grow up in a religious household. My dad, as a matter of fact, I've never seen my dad in a church ever, whether it's a funeral or wedding. But my dad he was a successful man. My dad came to my country, left his country, came to my country, married my mom. He had some money, so he bought a business, a dry cleaning business, and was very successful. And but in addition to that, he worked at the Panama Canal Zone, so he was able to provide for his family. And my dad really took pride in being able to provide for his family. We had not only our needs met, but our wants. And my mom was simply a woman of substance. My mom grew up in a household with values and morals, and as they define it. So she was a woman of substance with character and integrity. My dad was simply a hard-working man that took pride in providing for his family. And the only reason we went to Catholic school, it's because it was the best private school. There were two. It was one of the best private schools in my city, and we just went there. I had my first communion and confirmation and all that, but not because we were religious. It's simply because we went to that school, and that was part of the protocol, that came with it. You had to have your first communion and so forth. So I having that experience is not part of my growing up, except that later in life, I subscribed to that whole narrative of not being worthy and so forth. But for some reason, it didn't stick with me. So I sort of understood what this person was saying. But going back to my dad, so my mom and dad, they just lived a normal life. My dad went to work. My mom ran the business. We had a lot of employees. She was one of the great bosses. She was just great, managing that business. We had our help in the house to do the cleaning and so forth. So my dad, again, he just took pride in being able to provide for his family, and he did that well. And we just lived a normal life, a very normal life, and according to my estimation, the way I see it, my perspective. So there was nothing. And you know what? Back then, I didn't think in terms of whether I was happy or not. Like now, we kind of try to evaluate it. Are you happy in this environment? Are you happy there? Sometimes, when kids are in counseling, they ask them, are you happy and so forth. For me, for myself and my siblings, I have two sisters, and we were just happy by default. That's it. We were just happy. We had the things that we needed to live well. And my dad wasn't like an affectionate father, but he was, again, happy in being able to provide for his family abundantly. And he really lived a good life. I remember he would work all week, but on weekends he would take my mom to a cabaret. They'll meet another couple there. And I remember getting my mom dressed up and so forth, and they would go out to celebrate. We talk about vintage charm. They were in their vintage charm at that time. And my dad did not wait until he retired in life. No, he enjoyed his life as he lived it, and took my mom, and they used to go to the cabaret and often, or other places, other entertainment places. And back then, it cost a lot, but because he did so well, he was able to do that. So he was enjoying life during that stage. And now that I think back, I really admire him for that. It's just now that, I'm in this vintage charm season that I make reference back to that. And I thought, wow, my dad really was ahead of his time. He did not waste time. He did not wait until he retired from life. He lived every day, and he did it unapologetically. And my mom, she was right there with him, having fun, and we were just, again, growing up in a normal household. So this person shared with me that, she really has these issues. She doesn't know who she is, and she doesn't trust her decisions. She second guesses herself. She overthinks everything, and she cannot come up with a decision. Things happen. She doesn't know how to figure things out. She doesn't know how to bring resolution to her life. And I the more I think of it, a lot of people are really experiencing that type of narrative in their minds, and they cannot really break loose to be themselves because they're burdened down by years of religious indoctrination. And it's really sad because this season, this is your season. Yeah, I don't know how many other seasons are left, but this is your season to enjoy that. And if you don't know, number one, who you are, or that you have your own truth, then you will really never come into the fullness of a meaningful life to be fulfilled now. And to you, I want to say this. If you're experiencing that type of narrative, that type of, chatter in your mind, those thoughts, that burden, that weight, that feeling of being stifled, not being able to just burst out and be yourself, I want to tell you right now, my friend, there is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. And you are worthy. You are worthy, and you're not a sinner. And you should trust your heart, trust your intuition, trust your intuition, trust your instinct, trust your thoughts. And when you're ready to make a decision, just do it. There's nothing wrong with you. Stop thinking that your life has no meaning, that you're unworthy, that you're a sinner, and being in this place of fear of punishment. And all that happens, you know why? Because you're living according to someone else's truth. You're living someone else's narrative. What is your truth? Do you know that you can live a life of substance once you discover your truth? Once you discover your truth and you decide what that is. My husband and I did that years ago, about 14 years ago. You can discover your own truth because the truth that you're living by, the information that you have garnered, all that information, all that narrative about, you're not good enough, you have no worth, don't trust your heart, you're a sinner, and all of that is somebody else's truth. All of that is somebody else's narrative. And did you know what happens with that? Do you know what happens with that when you're living somebody else's truth? It is not sustainable. When you are living someone else's truth, it is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. Look around. That's why people say, I believe this, I believe that. Why? Because you're not sure. There's doubt. And of course, there's fear associated with it. It's not sustainable. Look around. Look at the people in your circle, those people that believe like you do. That narrative is not sustainable because it is not yours. That is not your truth. And most people don't even realize, wait a minute, I have a brain, I have a mind of my own, I have a heart that I can listen to, and I have the ability to think critically. I have emotional intelligence because you do. I can use that to come up with my own truth, to discover what works for me. Because if you're living your life, again, if you're motivated by fear right now, just with those thoughts of being invisible and thinking you have no worth. And then you're afraid to make a move because you're afraid of punishment or you're afraid of judgment. That is not your truth. Because your truth, my friend, your truth is what makes you free. When you know your truth, that is the truth that makes you free. That is the truth that makes you free. It's not okay, you've told me this and I think so. I believe that's true, but I'm not sure, because again, belief is when you're not sure. Belief is actually doubt. You are not sure. But when you have your own truth, there is certainty in that. There is assurance, there is confidence, assertiveness in that. So it behooves you, my friend, to find your own truth. You know, years ago, my husband, when I met my husband, I mentioned to you earlier that I did not grow up in religion. That just was not part of my upbringing. But when I got older, I, start subscribing to that through some kind of encounter with someone, and I start subscribing to religious doctrine and so forth. And I really dove deep into it. I mean, I was like all in and try to live that righteous life and so forth. And, we always, miss the mark simply because, again, it was not my truth. So I met my husband, and my husband came into our relationship just a normal man of character and integrity, and someone that can be trusted and so forth. But he was not religious, even though he grew up in a in a religious environment, but just of a different type of religion where you pretty much just a lot of pageantry and formalities and stuff like that. Nothing like driving into, he did not even know what, he didn't think in terms of being a sinner or being unworthy. He didn't hear anything like that at all. So he was fine. But I had all these things because it's something that I acquired in my adult life. And and if I had followed that, talk about not being able to keep that, the narrative, the rules, the commands, the laws, not being able to walk in that path with rectitude, because you miss the mark and so forth. And if I had followed that, I would have never married my husband, because we would have been what you call unequally yoked. He was not in my circle. He was not in my circle. And but I when I met him and fell in love with my husband, that was not even an option. That was not even an option. I did not even think, maybe perhaps I should have, could have, would have. No, I just went ahead and start dating him, and then we got married. And I asked him today, I asked him recently, I said, why did you follow me? Or why did you, if I was that and you were not into that type of religious programming? And he said, we just laughed. He says, that's what love does, and he says it's because he loved me and he just went along with it. So for like the first 15 years of our marriage, we just, we were part of that. My husband just kind of went along with the program. He didn't really subscribe to it, just because he has, he's a strong person. He has a mind of his own, and he cannot be influenced easily like that, in that regard, to subscribe to that doctrine. But he listened, and he thought it was nice, but he was not about to get like water baptized and things like that. The point is this: we spent about 15 years of our lives under that narrative. And after a while, my husband said, during during that time, I worked, he worked, and we had a good life. We traveled once a year, and that was nice, and so forth, and it was okay. But it came a point where my husband said, you know what, that's it. He said, I am done. He said, you know what, this is just not, we are not growing, we're not evolving. There's nothing, our lives is just flat, it's just stale, and I feel stifled. We have got to find a new way to live. He wanted to really live a life of vibrancy and, adventure, and really do stuff that would be bring joy and happiness, and just really something a little more excitable. And he said, you know what, we are done. We are done with that whole circle, and we're going to move on. And we did. We moved on. We left that uh, doctrine, that religious doctrine, and so forth. For me, it was a little more challenging because I was really into it. But I love my husband, and I yeah, I went along. I agree. I didn't just go along. I agreed. And I am telling you, my friend, I talked in previous shows about experiencing a journal of self discovery. Well, I'm telling you, I did that. Not only did I have a journey of self discovery, but I discovered my truth. I discovered that when you live by your own truth, of course, that's where authenticity happens. You start being yourself. You start being yourself, and you're not really worried about what people say or what people think. And when you do that, it's like life just rushes to honor that. It's like life just waits for you to get that, and it rushes to honor your path. That has been my experience when I discovered my truth. And I shared before how we came up with what works for us. And our lives, we live by three principles: love, kindness, and compassion. That's it. We're not, we don't think in terms of reward or punishment or that you're a sinner. We don't think of none of that. And life is good. And this we made that decision like 14 years ago. We just we just decided to live life on our own terms, unapologetically. And since we have the freedom to think of things to do and to celebrate our lives. Every time we go out, we celebrate, just life in itself. And we think of travel. We love to travel. We have covered like 50 countries since then, been on like 25 cruises, and we just love that. And so we plan based on the things that we like to do. And I want to encourage you to do the same when you discover your truth. Because if you are motivated by fear, if your fear of punishment or judgment and things of that nature, you are not living. That's someone else's narrative. That's their truth. You have taken that upon yourself, and you're trying to live a straight, walk a straight line, and try to live based on that doctrine in your mind, and being guided by that doctrine. That's not your truth. That is not your truth. Now, if you allowed yourself to discover your truth and you came up with that, then that's a whole different story. Then that becomes your truth. But then again, you will be celebrating your life. You would not be afraid or wondering or afraid of punishment or judgment or criticism or condemnation and guilt and all of that, afraid to do this. When we travel and we meet other people of different cultures and different nationalities, different societies and stuff, we're not afraid to break bread with them. and sit and chat and learn about their culture and not feel any kind of way. And even some of our friends, we have friends of different uh, cultural and social background, and we don't limit ourselves. Why? Because we're not afraid. We're not afraid. We're not guided by you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't don't blend with unbelievers, and that's not part of our mo. That is not part of our lives. No, we love humanity and we love people, even those that are walking in the narrative of religious indoctrination. We just love people, and we like the freedom to be. We're not afraid of judgment, people judging us or being critical. No, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks, what they say. It doesn't matter. Why? Because you're walking in your true authentic self. I'm here to tell you, to remind you, my friend, there is nothing wrong with you. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. You just need to discover your truth. And when you discover your truth, you will see life will take on a whole new meaning. Life will just rush to honor your true authentic self. After I spent time last night with that whole sad episode, I spent about an hour in that whole situation. And then I, listened to a podcast and so forth and did some word game. I just try to keep myself busy during that time that I was at home in the dark and so forth. And I was listening to a podcast. Now listen to this. And this is a celebrity. And this person has been married twice, divorced twice. She's now single. And she was sharing the same thing. It's interesting how, I learned about this person that committed suicide, and then this other person about feeling lost, invisible, irrelevant to society at this point. And then I came across this podcast, and she was talking about her upbringing, and she was talking about, well, it really wasn't sex, but sex was part of it. She said when she grew up in the church, and it was like pounded into her that premarital sex was a sin and she would be going to hell, and she was just consumed with fear. And by the time she was a young adult and so forth, she said her hormones were kicking up, and she just really wanted to have sex. This is a podcast, it's out there. And she said when she met this guy, she said, I didn't love him. I was not in love with him. I didn't even like him. He was okay and so forth. And I guess he asked her to marry him, and she got married. She says, I didn't marry because I was in love. She said, I got married because I wanted to have sex. Because she understood that premarital sex, that was the narrative that was the morality that she got from, growing up in that kind of environment. So she, in her mind, she would not even dare to have premarital sex. And as far as I'm concerned now, see, I used to think that way before. There's no such thing as premarital sex. Just take that out of, there's no such thing as premarital sex. What if the person doesn't get married? What if the person doesn't get married? We have to honor our bodies. And, sex is like the greatest emotional and pleasurable sensation of the human physiology. It's just, we are created that way, and we are created to be expressive. And, being an adult, you make the decisions for yourself. That's what when I coach people, that's what I tell them. That is a private matter, that you make that decision. So this person, she said, yeah, I just got married because I wanted to have sex. And she got married, and the marriage did not work out. And, she got married again a few years later, and Then she got divorced. And she said today, that narrative is not even mine. She says, I don't even think in those terms at all. She said, I make decisions for myself, and that's it. It's a private matter, it's a private issue. And I agree with her 100%. But imagine that. Imagine that she was all, all really flustered and to get married just to have sex. I mean, that is, but that was a true story. I didn't, I haven't heard it from her. And I thought, imagine that. Imagine that. Her being an adult. It's not like she was, and this whole thing about morality is all relative. My morality may be different from yours. Our morality here in America is different from people of other nations, perhaps in the East and so forth. For them, it may be okay to marry a 15-year-old child, person, girl. For us, it's illegal, except for a few states. There's some states that allow that. But overall, it's not something that's legal in most states here in the West, in the US. So it's all, my thing as far as morality, I'm going to treat you with kindness. I'm going to extend love, and I'm going to live life on my own terms. Absolutely. Yes. Without fear of judgment or fear of criticism or what would people say, what would be, no. And it's interesting because when you determine that, when you discover your own truth, it's, so my husband and I, we've been married for 32 wonderful years, and that is the truth. All our friends, they see us together and they know that it's, I love him, he loves me, and so forth. Do you know that my thought process is simply to do him well all the time. There is no struggle for me to be faithful to my husband. I don't even think in terms of being faithful because I love my husband. That is my truth. That is my narrative. I love my husband. So it's not a struggle for me to do the right thing or to do it. No, it's just, that's my truth. I live my truth in our relationship. And so does he. So does he. We have had 32 wonderful years of bliss. And I mean that. We've had situations that come up. Don't get me wrong. Don't go off thinking we've never had, an argument and all that. We do that. We disagree, we so forth. But, as far as even like calling each other names, we just don't do that. That's just our thing. That is our narrative. That's what works for us because we value respect above all. We value respect. So our platform is based on the respect we have for each other. There is nothing, you hear people that say things like the family that prays together stays together. Amigos, think about that. Think about that. The family that prays together stays together. It's not sustainable. That is not sustainable. That is not sustainable. And all the other stuff, it's just not sustainable. When you take on someone else's narrative, why would you do that when you have the ability, the capacity, the skills, and the knowledge to make your own decisions, to come up with what works for you? All you need is a little chutzpah, boldness, and confidence to do it. And you can. You can do it. As a matter of fact, you must do it, my friend, because in this season, this is a season of joy, of freedom, of adventure and fun, and a season for you to enjoy. This is your season. So whether it's a vintage charm at 60 plus or whatever season you're in, the fact that you are alive, I encourage you to live your life and live it on your terms unapologetically. There's this program. It just started airing. It's called the Golden Bachelor, and it's interesting because it's the first time, there's been the Bachelor and the Bachelorette and so forth, but this is the first time they've had a show with folks in their golden years. They call it golden years. I call it vintage charm. And so there is this one guy that has 22, well, started out with 22 different prospects, women competing for his love. He's a widower, and for 7 years or something of that nature. And so he's gone on TV. It's a reality show. Whether you watch it or not, I'm just giving you a, capsule size synopsis. And so he's on the show, and there are different activities that the ladies do, and every week, every episode, they have a rose ceremony. And during the rose ceremony, he goes through a process of elimination. He eliminates those that he feels no connection with or no energy and so forth. So he just goes through a process of elimination. And he is now down to probably, I don't know, 6 or 8, something like that. But the point is, when he reaches to about 4 contestants, the women that are competing, and mind you, these ladies are like, the age range is like from, vintage charm at 60 plus up to, I don't know, 71 or something like that. But my friend, these ladies are beautiful. They are all beautiful, different personalities, different all of that, but they're beautiful. They are beautiful. They're one of those vintage charm that are well kept, well preserved. And even if they, altered some things, I applaud them for that, because you know why? They are all confident. And today, confidence is the new sexy. So that means they're all sexy and assertive. You got to have a certain level of confidence and assertiveness to go on a show like that, because you put yourself out there. I that's not my makeup. I couldn't do that, but I admire that kind of confidence. As a matter of fact, I said to my husband, I said, what I know about you now and the way I know you now, if you were a Golden Bachelor, I would be on that show to compete for your heart, but I would be competing to win. And he's like, oh, okay. You already have the rose, so you don't have the final rose. So, but I admire these women. So I'm in this group chat with a bunch of ladies and so forth, and everybody has a comment about, the actual Bachelor and about the women. Oh, some comments are just so critical and, criticizing the ladies and so forth, but that's besides the point. Now that the Bachelor is down to like 4 candidates, there's going to be, each one will have a date with him. And at the end of the date, there will be a card, and both of them will have to decide if they want to end the evening in the fantasy suite, or if they want to forfeit the fantasy suite and go back to their individual rooms. Now, remember, these women are mothers, they're grandmothers, they're, they are, some of them are, divorced, separated, whatever, and some are widowed. I say that to say this: there are experienced women that have faced life issues and now in their golden years to make decisions for their lives. And so some of the comments that I have read in the group chat talks about everybody's all, well, not everyone, but most people are upset about this fantasy suite. Oh, they shouldn't have a fantasy suite because, he will be sleeping with this lady and that lady, and people are just up in arms about a fantasy suite. Imagine that. These are adults, the Bachelor himself, he's an adult. He's a grown man. He's got kids and grandkids. He's been a widower for like 7 years. And in my mind, I'm like, what's the big deal? They make a decision as to what they want to do. Do they want to go in the fantasy suite? And besides, whatever happens in the fantasy suite, we would never know. We can just assume or think or, just, presume what happened. But it doesn't matter. It does not matter. And the fantasy suite is, the whole idea for the fantasy suite is so that they can get to know each other intimately. Call me open-minded or whatever. That is none of my business. When I dated my husband for 2 years, we dated for 2 years, and our personal life was a private matter. It was a private issue, a personal issue. That was not a matter of discussion to anyone, and no one would ever ask us. No, we dated for 2 years and we got married. So whatever you choose to do at in this season of your life, just know that it is a personal matter. And if that's your truth, I'm telling you, there will be no guilt or shame or blame associated with it or judgment. You've got to get rid of that. None of that. That's someone else's. Someone else decided that, and you're living someone else's narrative. Now, these ladies on the show, that's why, they're some hot mamacitas. They are. And, I get a chance to chime in on this group thing, and I would always compliment them and put my, comment in the, section there and so forth, because, I think they're bold. This is the 21st century, my friend. This is 2023. And you have to remain relevant as we evolve. And nobody should determine what's good or bad, right or wrong. You determine that. And that is where your truth lies. You decide what's good and what's bad. As a matter of fact, I don't even think in terms of good or bad. I don't. If I make a mistake, well, then I just correct it. If I make a decision, if it wasn't the right decision, it's not a bad decision. It was not the right decision for this situation. So I don't think in terms of good or bad or right or wrong. I have my perspective. It doesn't mean yours is wrong. You have your perspective. I respect that. And we just go on. That is just the way it is. And I encourage you, my friend, discover your own truth. What is your truth? When you know your truth and you start to evolve into your true, authentic self, you will know it's true because you will have no guilt. You will have no fear. You will have no judgment, even of self. There will be no shame. There will be no blame. And when people see you, they will just have to accept you the way you are. And even if they don't accept you, as a matter of fact, they don't really have to accept you. You just are. And they decide how they communicate with you. It's that simple. You may have to give up some relationships because people would not be able, I've got, people that don't understand my way of thinking, but that's fine. My life works for me. And your life should work for you so that you don't feel like you are irrelevant and invisible. No, celebrate yourself. And when you celebrate yourself, you will attract the right circumstances, situations, people, and things. My husband and I, we are always, we have a thing where we say, things always work out. Whenever we have an issue, we say things always work out. Things always work in our favor. And in most cases, almost 100%, it works even beyond the way we planned it. It always works out because that is the confidence that comes with walking in your truth. What is your truth, my friend? What is your truth for yourself? Or are you listening to the same narrative from someone else and living their truth? And then in your life, it's not sustainable. And then you beat up yourself and you think of yourself as unworthy and ugly and insignificant and irrelevant and nobody likes you and you mean nothing and so forth. And then you take yourself down that place. That's not the way it is, my friend. You have your own story. You have your own truth. And do not be afraid to discover what that is and live your truth authentically. And you'll see, you may say, well, I don't have the confidence to do that. I don't have the, but what happens is that as you acquire that, as you learn your truth, with knowing it comes confidence and assertiveness. And therein lies your freedom. That's the freedom that sets you free. Your truth is the freedom that sets you free, not the freedom from outside. It is your truth. Yours is the truth that sets you free. My friend, I am telling you, I am fired up because when I share with you, it's like talking to myself. And I just love it. I am just really grateful that you joined me today. This is every week, same time, same place. And if you missed the broadcast, you can always check it out 24/7 on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And if you want to drop me a note, go to my website. It's right down there, thecynthialinoxshow.com. And send me an email, and with any questions you might have or anything you may want to share with me. And for those of you that have taken time to send me little encouragement notes and things like that, I want to thank you because the encouragement is great. Even if it's one person, I know that it's really the message is coming across, and you appreciate it. And I do thank you for that. In the meantime, amigos, I am going to say ta-ta, and I will see you next week, same time, same place. And I just want to remind you again, find your truth, because that's the truth that will set you free to be your true, authentic self. So, au revoir. Ta-ta.